what's going on in North Korea. Now, that launch followed at least 2 others of shorter range Scud-C missiles that were launched in the direction of Japan, according to State Department officials and Japanese officials who say that they fell in the Sea of Japan short of land. There are also reports, and we have more than one American source saying that a 4th missile also was launched, again, a short-range missile by North Korea. So a series of missile launches by North Korea just in the last few hours. And clearly, if North Korea wants the world's attention, it has it. John?
Let's break this down a little bit, David. Assuming that these initial reports are true and the test of the Taepodong-2, North Korea's new longer-range missile, failed, from a security perspective, what is the meaning of that?
Well, it's a relief to those who have to defend the country, to intelligence and military officials who were watching this to see whether they needed to react in any way. Obviously, they're pleased. And presumably, it's a relief to the policymakers as well to see that North Korea doesn't appear to have the kind of technological capability that it apparently wanted to exhibit to the world. That said, you have a dictator who's firing off missiles. They're going in all sorts of directions. It doesn't appear that North Korea has the kind of technology to put a guidance system on these missiles and make it reliably hit a target. You heard CNN's Barbara Starr reporting earlier that military officials say one of the short-range missiles may have even gotten pretty close to Russian territorial waters. So there's going to be all kinds of implications, and you can assume there's going to be some very high-level diplomacy in the coming hours.
I want to move on to that point quickly, David. There's a technical analysis, obviously, of where did the missiles go, why were they launched, if they did fail, why did they fail. There's also a political intelligence analysis, if you will. What is Kim Jong-il up to? And your sources are saying?
Saying that he wants the world's attention quite clearly, that their analysis is that it annoys him that Iran, with its nuclear program, is getting most of the attention of the West. He wants to make a deal, but he wants to make it in a crisis atmosphere where he can rattle his saber, and that is what he's doing.
It's perhaps what he does best. David Answer, our national security correspondent. David, thank you, and we will check back in with you. Now, for more on the military ramifications and the security consequences, let's bring in our Pentagon correspondent, Barbara Starr. Barbara?
John, we've spoken to military officials again within the last few minutes, additional details, additional analysis coming in. They now say, yes, they can confirm that it was a launch of a Taepodong-2 by North Korea. They say that their technical assessment now is this missile failed so quickly after launch. It failed somewhere between 30 seconds and 60 seconds in the launch cycle, failing less than a minute after launch, which was one of the reasons, of course, the U.S. military didn't have to do anything about it. But perhaps one of the most fascinating details we're learning now that will unfold over the next many hours, I suspect, is that the U.S. military, the U.S. intelligence community saw all 3 launches today, in the words of officials, as they happened. U.S. intelligence and military satellites, of course, for weeks now have been keeping very close watch on North Korea, on the Korean Peninsula, and there are satellites operated by the military that can instantly pick up any sign of an exhaust plume from a missile launch. So it's becoming apparent very quickly here that the U.S. had eyes on North Korea, and in the words of military officials, saw all 3 launches as they happened. Now, that triggered the normal launch event reporting procedures in the U.S. military. They very quickly, we are told, went through their standard procedures, convening phone calls, getting all the essential national security elements together, watching this. If it had gone longer, if within that minute, John, whatever the next steps might have been, could have involved action by the U.S. military, as we've been saying. But as they watched it, they learned very quickly that they really wouldn't have to do much about it because all 3 missiles, 2 of them falling into the Sea of Japan, shorter range, the Taepodong, failing within a minute. But officials also now saying that Taepodong also landed harmlessly in the Sea of Japan. They do not know if the North Koreans took any action once they saw it fail to destroy it themselves. That's something they're still trying to assess, whether there was a launch destruct order given by the North Koreans, but it went into the Sea of Japan and failed very, very quickly. So even as the U.S. was monitoring the situation as it unfolded, the U.S. military not really having to do much about it other than watch it, John.
And Barbara, help our viewers understand. Obviously, we anticipate the first reaction from the Bush administration will come in the diplomatic arena. But what are the U.S. military capabilities in the region? Obviously, longstanding deployments in Japan and in South Korea. But my understanding is some additional resources have been moved to the region to watch this anticipated test. True?
Absolutely, John. Over the last many weeks, as this mounted, as it became increasingly apparent the North Koreans might launch, the U.S. military, the U.S. intelligence community, clearly putting more efforts into the region. Spy planes, reconnaissance planes, changing the paths of satellites if they needed to have them keep watch over the area more. The U.S. Navy has continued with its long-scheduled exercises out in the Western Pacific, and the U.S. Navy regularly now keeps a couple of ships out in the Western Pacific that have highly specialized radars that can scan and detect missile launches and keep track. So it's something over the last couple of years they have generally stepped up U.S. capabilities. They've also stepped them up in particular in the last couple of weeks. And as we have continued to report, the missile defense capability in Alaska, in California, was fully alerted, activated, ready to go if President Bush had decided he needed to give the order to try and shoot down any of those North Korean missiles. At the end of the day, of course, he didn't have to. The North Koreans managed to apparently fail all on their own. John.
Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr. Thank you, Barbara. You keep checking in with your sources, and we'll keep checking back with you. Thank you very much, Barbara. We're joined on the phone now for more perspective by David Kaye. He's the former UN weapons inspector, the chief weapons inspector in Iraq, someone who is quite familiar with the capabilities and the geopolitics, if you will, of North Korea. David Kaye, Kim Jong-il firing at least 3 missiles on this Independence Day in the United States, on a day when the United States also was returning the space shuttle program to space. What is Kim Jong-il's calculation?
Well, I think it fits with the standard explanation of as much as we know about North Korea. And we all ought to be honest, there's very little that we know about the internal dynamics of that regime, but that here is an individual who desperately wants attention. He needs a deal with the United States. He believes both for security and economic reasons. And essentially, the Bush administration has stiff-armed him, not being willing to come forward with direct negotiations outside of the Group of 6 discussions. So I think it's a desperate play. It obviously didn't work. And I think the most interesting sidebar story is going to be what happens in Pyongyang. Who vouched for the reliability of this missile, and what are the consequences now that it failed?
Well, David, what's your calculation? I think many would reflexively say if the test of this new long-range missile failed, that it weakens Pyongyang's hand. But this is, as you said, a secretive, reclusive regime. We don't know much about its internal calculations. Could it cause some desperate reaction, if you will?
Well, John, I worry as much about weakening in Pyongyang's hand as strengthening, because we know so little about it. The one thing we do know, or think we know, it has 5 to 6 nuclear warheads. And is a secretive regime. So a weakened Pyongyang might not necessarily be more in the interest of stability and peace on the Korean Peninsula and that part of East Asia. I don't think we know enough to know how this will play out. I think that probably is the focus of what limited intelligence gathering we have right now.
And you've, in your view, used the term stiff arm by the Bush administration. Certainly there are others who have, without using that term, have said they wish the administration was more generous in what it was willing to put on the table, the carrots, if you will. One would also assume reflexively that if you're the president of the United States, the last thing you're going to do after, on your country's birthday, a country with you, who you've been in a confrontation fires 3 or 4 missiles into the air, one would assume the last thing the president would be inclined to do is to put more carrots on the table.
I think that's absolutely true, although I must say the carrot that they really want, North Korea really wants a relationship with the United States. I think what most people have missed, and it's primarily in many ways because we've spoken the opposite way of asking the Chinese to bring pressure on the North Koreans. My read of North Korea in my discussions when I've been in Asia recently is that the North Koreans are deeply suspicious of the Chinese. They realize how much economic power they have over them, and they would like a relationship with us as much to counter the Chinese. I think it unlikely. This was a stupid, ill-advised ploy on their part. But it also shows how little they understand the U.S. I think any analyst would have said, as you said, on the 4th of July, you're going to fly rockets and expect day of not only independence, but the launch of the Discovery, and expect the U.S. to respond with generosity and open arms towards you. But that also tells us a great deal about North Korea. We don't understand them, and they clearly misunderstand us.
David Kaye, former Chief Weapons Inspector. David, thank you for sharing your perspective. We may check back in with you as more information comes in. Again, David, thank you very much. And of course, this is being watched not only here in the United States, but very closely too in Japan, where CNN's Atika Schubert is standing by. Atika?
Some big concerns here in Japan, just waking up to the news that at least 3 missiles have landed just short of the northern island of Hokkaido into the Sea of Japan. Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Shinzo Abe held a quick press conference earlier this morning where he confirmed to reporters that those 3 missiles have been launched, also saying it was a grave concern to Japan and that Japan would launch a strong protest to North Korea over the launch. He made no mention, however, of any UN Security Council meeting, also no mention of economic sanctions, which Japan has threatened to do if North Korea launched these missiles. But definitely here in Japan, a lot of anxiety over these tests, John.
Explain what could happen from Japan's perspective, in the sense that the United States, of course, has very little direct dealings with North Korea, only at the negotiating table, and those negotiations have not gone on for some time. Japan is the source of food for a starving nation. What is the political calculation in punishing Kim Jong-il? You would, in fact, be punishing the North Korean people.
Well, as you say, the diplomatic relations between Japan and North Korea are not very good. They're very strained at the moment. Japan has said that if North Korea launched these missiles, they would impose economic sanctions, and that could have quite a deep impact on the North Korean economy. It is very isolated. It depends very heavily on what little trade it has with Japan, with some of North Korean residents that live here in Japan and try and send cash and money back home. But it's unclear exactly how much of an impact economic sanctions would have, simply because we don't know that much about the North Korean economy and how it works. Now, of course, Japan and the United States are also looking towards China and South Korea. They're the countries with the most leverage on North Korea, the ones that have the best diplomatic relations. We're waiting for word from those governments' reaction, what they think about these tests.
Get more reaction. We will check back in. Our Atika Schubert in Tokyo. Atika, thank you very much. And to our viewers here in the United States and around the world, please stay with us. We'll have more on this breaking news ahead. North Korea launching at least 3 missiles on this Independence Day here in the United States. Still awaiting official reaction from the Bush White House. Also, coverage of the July 4th shuttle launch, the Space Shuttle Discovery, now in orbit. More on that, too. Please stay with us. You're in The Situation Room.
Denny's works for me because I'm never going to pay too much. Oh, I'm going to eat too much, but I'm never going to pay too much.
Denny's new Extreme Grand Slam. More bacon, more sausage, and you won't pay too much. Just $5.99. Denny's.
Works for me.
There's a company that builds more than 1 million vehicles a year in places called Indiana and Kentucky. One that has 10 plants, from the foothills of West Virginia to the Pacific coastline. What company is this? Toyota. A company that, along with its dealers and suppliers, has helped create hundreds of thousands of U.S. jobs. A company proud to do its small part to add to the landscape of America.
Life comes at you fast. Invest wisely. Invest with Nationwide. Investments, retirement, insurance.
Is on your side.
Guys, are you sick of feeling fat and tired? Has your sex life slowed down or even come to a screeching halt?
Introducing Nutrisystem for men.
Look at these guys. They all lost a ton of weight with Nutrisystem. You can too.
Order today and get 4 full weeks of awesome food. Plus, you'll get an extra week of hearty meals free. The secret to the system is the glycemic index, a science that separates good carbs from bad. So now you can eat pasta, burgers, even pizza.
Come on, get back in the game.
Since Nutrisystem, my sex life is excellent. I feel I'm back again. I feel like better than I did in high school.
About $10 a day gets you 4 full weeks of rib-sticking meals.
If you want to lose weight, pick up the phone and change your life.
I'm 40 years old. I'm in the best shape of my life.
Order our 4-week men's program and get an extra 7 breakfasts, lunches, dinners, and desserts, a full week of food, and a $70 value absolutely free. So call now.
Paul is on now. CNN tonight, 8 Eastern.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Welcome back to the Situation Room. I'm John King in Washington. Breaking news this afternoon. North Korea fires at least 3 missiles on this Independence Day here in the United States, provoking a national security confrontation with the Bush White House and with its neighbors in Asia as well. As we continue to track this story, helping us with our coverage, our senior UN correspondent Richard Roth in New York, our chief national security correspondent David Enser here in Washington. Let's begin with David, the latest.
Well, John, the latest is that after firing 2 Scud-C no-dong type short-range missiles in the direction of the Sea of Japan, which fell into the sea, and possibly another, but that is disputed, North Korea went ahead and launched, according to U.S. officials, State Department, military, and others, launched the No-Dong-2 missile that the world has been watching for weeks now to see whether it would be launched or not. It is a missile that some analysts believe might be capable of reaching U.S. territory, but in less than a minute, the missile fired out and fell down out of the sky. So that long-range missile that North Korea launched, that so many people had worried about, fizzled out. It was a failure. But still, you have North Korea launching at least 3 missiles today, falling in various places, and causing a great deal of concern here in Washington and around the world. John.
And David, as the technical analysis goes forward over the next days and weeks, update our viewers on what is known to the United States about the nuclear capabilities of North Korea. How many weapons does the CIA believe it has? And do we believe, and I think the answer here is not likely, that they can deliver a weapon on a missile, a nuclear weapon?
The answer to that last question is the U.S. does not believe they have the capability to build a nuclear weapon that can sit atop a missile and make it safely anywhere, basically. They don't believe that North Korea has the capability to miniaturize nuclear weapons technology to that level or to harden it to the point where it would survive the launch. So there's not much concern about that right now, although every time North Korea tries to advance itself, and a missile test is in an effort to do that, it does cause grave concern. Of course, there's some relief today that this long-range missile fizzled out as quickly as it did, but the fact that North Korea is once again testing long-range missiles after having promised to stop doing so is of serious concern.
And I assumed, as to the question as to why it fizzled out, it's going to take some time to get that information.
Well, that's right. And John Pike asked that very interesting question, and I hope we're going to get an answer in the coming hours. Was this missile pointed in a direction that would indicate it was designed to test launching a satellite, perhaps, in the future? Or was it pointed towards the United States and going over the top of Japan if it had been able to complete its journey? Something we need to find out.
A question to answer in the hours ahead. David Enser tracking this for us in Washington. Thank you very much, David. And as David tracks the intelligence and deals with the military assessment of all of this, of course, it becomes immediately a diplomatic confrontation, not only for the White House, but for the United Nations as well. Our senior UN correspondent, Richard Roth, standing by in New York. Richard?
John, I can guarantee you fireworks tonight at the United Nations, but they are July 4th fireworks. The UN opening its doors to a selected few to watch the fireworks on New York's East River. Tomorrow morning in New York, there will be discussions on North Korea. That we have been guaranteed. We don't know yet where they may lead. One Chinese official we spoke to in New York tonight said, well, we will maintain a cautious approach to see what exactly is going on. I suppose if they really wanted to draw the attention of the world, the whole world, North Korea did indeed get it. China has been North Korea's staunchest ally in the deliberations whenever this issue has come up, really blocking any harsher or firmer rhetoric that the UN Security Council might agree on. Ambassador John Bolton of the U.S. working the phones, talking to other ambassadors. One country said that they anticipate the U.S. and Japan, a member of the Security Council, to lead the way. Whether it will be a statement or something firmer is unknown. John, Kofi Annan and almost the entire diplomatic community had been warning North Korea against such a missile launch. John.
And Richard, warning against a missile launch. Now there have been at least 3 launches, including this longer range missile. Whether it failed or not, certainly North Korea thumbing its nose at its neighbors and the United States. How, based on your experience, does that change the dynamics if Japan or the United States come to the Security Council and say, we want sanctions? And let's be real about this. What type of sanctions can the UN put on a country that has such limited dealings with the world?
That's true. It certainly ramps up the dynamic. It gives the U.S. and Ambassador Bolton a much wider hand to be tough, to say this is what we need, and it may indeed even tip China over towards the other side. They like to talk peace, obviously, at the UN. It's a very diplomatic, buttoned-down world. But this, for many members of the Security Council, may be the evidence they have to go forward. At the UN and various non-governmental organizations, they say the people of North Korea are starving, and here they are launching missiles at the same time. They just have a very tough hand to play if they're looking for sympathy at the UN tomorrow for North Korea.
Richard Roth for us in New York. Richard, thank you very much. We will check back in you. We will continue to follow this breaking news story on Independence Day here in the United States. North Korea launching at least 3, perhaps 4 missiles, provoking at least a diplomatic confrontation. We are tracking reaction from the White House and around the world. Back to that story in just a few minutes. But another closely watched launch today, Space Shuttle Discovery, lifting off safely despite ongoing concern over safety of some foam insulation. CNN's John Zarrella is live for us at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida with the latest. John?
Hi, John. Certainly a launch of a different sort here at the Kennedy Space Center today at 2:38 p.m. after a couple of days of weather delays, fighting bugaboo yesterday with the foam insulation and the 5-inch by 1/8-inch deep crack that they found. NASA worked through that problem, worked through a little bit of weather issue today, and the shuttle Discovery lifted off through those beautiful clear blue skies on its way to rendezvous with the International Space Station. Following the launch, one little issue that has cropped up, at least little at this point, looking at some of the isolation shots of the external tank on the ascent into orbit, there were some what appears to be visual evidence that some tiny pieces of foam may in fact have fallen off again from the external tank. NASA officials are again looking very closely at that, looking at other isolation cameras. You can barely make out there on those shots some of the tiny pieces flaking away. But during the post-launch news conference, those NASA officials said that at this point it does not look like it was a serious issue, and that foam falling off in that general area at the point in time when it did fall off is actually something that they expected. So again, we're going to be watching later tonight for any more information on this latest foam issue, if it is an issue. Other than that, John, it was smooth sailing for Discovery on its way now to a rendezvous with the International Space Station. John?
And John, walk us through how that works. They say so far so good based on everything they've seen and everything they think, but there are, I looked at some research, 100 cameras and radars pointing at the shuttle when it takes off, and just after the booster separated, the astronauts themselves take pictures from space that are beamed back down. How long does this review take?
That's exactly right. And those cameras, the astronauts, 2 of them actually get up and they go to the window and they watch the external tank fall away as it falls into the Indian Ocean at about 7-8 minutes into the launch. And the first blush look at these images will take place tonight when they're downlinked back into Houston and back here to the Kennedy Space Center. And then over the course of the next day or 2, before they can actually analyze, the engineers, those pictures to see if, in fact, these pieces of foam insulation were harmful or not. John?
John Zarrella at the Kennedy Space Center. John, we'll check back in with you as well. So far, so good, though, for the Discovery mission. Thank you very much, John. More in our breaking news story. This North Korea launching at least 3 missiles on this Independence Day here in the United States. Still awaiting official reaction from the Bush White House, the diplomatic fallout in Asia and around the world as well. We'll continue to track it. Stay with us. You're in the Situation Room.
Today, a soldier sees a snapshot of the terrain, a pilot an image of the airspace, the commander a view of the mission. But they're all part of a bigger picture. That's why Boeing is helping create a remarkable network to gather and analyze data from every source, then deliver the right information instantly. So the bigger picture is a safer world. Boeing, forever new frontiers.
When Walter got hurt on the job, he was out of work for almost a year.
We would have lost this house if it hadn't been for the disability insurance.
It's insurance that he didn't think that we needed.
Mutual of Omaha.
She always brings that up.
Begin today.
Oh, hi. This is a great place for romance. And that chair is perfect. You should go to Vongo.com. For less than $10 a month, you can download all the romantic movies you want. You even get your first 14 days free. If you prefer action or comedy, Vongo's library is huge. Of course, we won't be together if that's what you plan to watch.
When you fill someone's life with hope, you wind up adding a little more to your own. Help America's youth. Be a friend. Be a mentor. Just be there.
Go to bigbrothersbigsisters.org.
Welcome back to the Situation Room. I'm John King in Washington. Dramatic breaking news this Independence Day, July 4th in the United States. North Korea launching at least 3 missiles, provoking a diplomatic confrontation with the Bush White House, with its neighbors in Asia as well. This after the United States had warned North Korea not to test a long-range missile sitting on a platform for some time in North Korea. That long-range missile, the Taepodong-2, among those fired today. The first official reaction now coming in from the Bush White House. That's where we find our White House correspondent, Ed Henry. Ed?
Good evening, John. That's right. From a senior administration official, we now have official confirmation from the White House that, in fact, there were 3 launches out of North Korea. This official saying that in terms of questions about a 4th missile, the White House has nothing on that. They're unaware of a 4th missile. They're confirming 3 missiles. The first one, about 2:33 Eastern Time. The second one, 3:04 Eastern Time. Both of those missiles, short or medium-range missiles, according to the senior administration official. Just about 4:01 Eastern Time, the 3rd missile, the Taepodong-2 missile, the long-term missile, was launched. About 4:01 Eastern Time. We're told by this senior official that it was aborted within about 42 seconds. This 3rd missile, as we've been reporting, did in fact fail, according to the White House. Now, the president was informed, we're finally hearing, shortly thereafter, at some point as these missiles were being launched. We're told that there were senior officials here at the White House in the Situation Room getting these reports out of North Korea. That information was obviously being fed directly to the president. We're also told the president has now spoken to Defense Secretary Rumsfeld, Secretary of State Rice, as well as the National Security Advisor Stephen Hadley to assess the situation, obviously. But the president, we're told, is moving ahead tonight with watching the fireworks here on the National Mall from the White House, also moving ahead with the small birthday bash. We've been told about his birthday, 60th birthday is on Thursday, of course. So even though this is obviously an urgent situation, the White House moving ahead somewhat as if business as usual. Now, some other news. Chris Hill from the State Department, senior State Department official, now headed to the region tomorrow. Headed to Korea to deal with the situation. Stephen Hadley, the National Security Advisor, here tomorrow will be meeting with his South Korean counterpart here in D.C. The South Korean counterpart happens to be in Washington. The basic line from the senior administration official is, quote, North Korea once again has been isolated. We asked them not, various nations asked them not to do this, but they moved ahead anyway. Basically, the White House saying they will continue to monitor the situation. They will continue to consult with others from the 6-party talks. Also, interesting to note, the White House saying they do not believe that the UN Security Council will meet tonight. And the White House also careful to try to cast this as not a U.S. versus North Korea situation, saying this is between North Korea and the 5 others in the 6-party talks. When asked whether the White House believes that Kim Jong-il did this on the 4th of July to provoke the United States even more since it's Independence Day, this official saying you'll have to ask the dear leader, a derisive reference, of course, to Kim Jong-il. Finally, also, this official saying, quote, there's no immediate threat to the United States, but this is a provocation. So the White House trying to walk a fine line here where they're trying to reassure Americans who are just getting these urgent reports. The White House does not believe there is a, quote, immediate threat to the United States, but they are making clear, obviously, this is a provocation from North Korea, but the White House does not want to make this the United States against North Korea. They want to make this North Korea against the other five in those six-party talks to try to build an international coalition here, John.
That has been, Ed, as you well know, the consistent administration line. It refuses to get into a one-on-one, if you will, debate with North Korea and the dear leader, as the senior official put it. People watching might not know the name Chris Hill. He, of course, has been the U.S. negotiator in those six-party talks. But what we're seeing here is one of the dances of diplomacy, if you will. I want you to shed some insight on it. The North Korean leader fires 3 missiles. He wants the attention of the President of the United States. He wants the President of the United States, one would assume, to pick up the phone and call the Prime Minister of Japan, to call the President of China. Instead, the President is sending a State Department official to the region, which takes some time to have consultations with, takes some time. So if North Korea wanted to turn the volume up to 10, the Bush administration is trying to put it, I would guess, at about 2 or 3.
Exactly. And clearly you're right. By sending Chris Hill, a senior State Department official, but still as senior as he is, still an official, obviously not the president himself, not the Secretary of State. Clearly the White House trying to send the signal they're not going to be drawn into a direct Kim Jong-il versus President Bush. They're very clearly saying this is about North Korea against the entire international community. The senior administration official also pointing out that others in the region, China, South Korea, others had reached out, had urged North Korea, do not go forward with these tests, and they defied those warnings anyway. They defied those diplomatic efforts. So the White House clearly trying to show the diplomatic door is still open, despite this provocation, in the words of the senior official, but also not wanting to be drawn in at the presidential level, trying to make this and really further isolate Kim Jong-il, John.
And Ed, I'm betting I know the answer from my days there, but any indication from this senior official at all, if the United States is willing to respond to this down the road with more incentives, more carrots, if you will, or if the administration's position is we have a proposal on the table at the six-party talks, we're not budging, North Korea should come back?
Very clearly, the senior official saying that they are not budging, basically, that they are moving, that they want to move forward anyway with the six-party talks, and that really the ball is still, as it has been for months, for years, really, the ball is in North Korea's court now more than ever, and that it's for them to come to back to these six-party talks. Also, I asked the senior official directly, what about a military option from the United States? Immediately, the senior official saying that, again, this is not about the U.S. reacting directly. This is about the others in the six-party talks dealing with this diplomatically, trying to build this international coalition to say, look, North Korea, it's time for you to come to the table, stop the provocation. So not wanting to be drawn in at any level as U.S. versus North Korea, that this is the world against North Korea, John.
Ed Henry, for us on a suddenly busy day at the White House. Ed, we'll check back in with you a bit later. Thank you very much. And so how does all this look from the sky? What does the United States see with its spy satellites and other technology? Our Kira Phillips has some of the best sources in the business at the Northern Command and at NORAD. She joins us now on the phone. Hey, Kira.
Hey, John, and they haven't stopped working. My sources now within U.S. Northern Command and NORAD tell me a fourth missile has been launched. Not a long-range missile, not the missile that they've been concerned about, the Taipei-Tong missile, that third missile that was launched from the area that they had been watching from the Joint Operations Center there at U.S. Northern Command and NORAD. But this was a short-range missile, not to be concerned or not to be confused, obviously, with that third long-range missile that was a big concern. But the fourth missile, a short-range missile, was launched within the past 15 minutes or so, I'm being told from my sources. So just to back up a little bit, John, we were able to tell our viewers about that first missile, short-range missile that was launched just prior to the shuttle. Was North Korea trying to send a message? Interesting. The sources within NORAD and U.S. Northern Command tell me, look, it was an act of a lunatic. That's how we feel about this. Was it a threat to the United States as soon as we saw that first one? No, it was not a threat to the United States. Then the second one happened, and then the third, which was that long-range missile, dying out after it was launched within 50 seconds. Now, a fourth short-range missile has been launched. Very interesting time, obviously, for those within U.S. Northern Command and NORAD. Not the kind of 4th of July that they wanted to be partaking in, but they said that they knew that something was going to happen. They've been monitoring North Korea, John, for the past couple of weeks very intensely, that I'm told. I know that these individuals have not been taking vacation. They have not been taking time away from the job. They've been there paying close attention to North Korea. So did today surprise them? Does this fourth missile surprise them? No, but they're on it. And they do say they are prepared to respond if they feel it's necessary, that their systems are on alert, and if indeed they have to react, that they will. But at this point, they don't see it a threat. They're just monitoring what exactly North Korea is doing minute by minute right now.
And Kira, did they say anything you found interesting about what they saw in the missile trajectory? Anything about the space of timing between the launches? Do they make anything of that yet, or are they still gathering and analyzing?
Definitely, they thought it was interesting that the first three happened pretty consecutively. And then there were some reports coming out, as you were reporting. I think it was Japanese television. You'll have to correct me if that's not right. And, of course, I immediately called back and said, what's the deal with this? No, absolutely not. They told me that is not, there has not been a fourth. Now they're saying a little bit of a time span here. They can confirm within the last 15 minutes or so that there was another missile that was launched. Here's what's interesting, John. After they told me, look, we don't see this as a threat to the United States at this point, but we are ready to react if we need to. I said, okay, so what's next? What should we be paying attention to? First thing out of these individuals, watch the Japanese reaction. And then, of course, within the past hour, when I was talking with my sources, they said we're on the phone with China, Russia, and Japan. All three of those countries could have been threatened by this. All three of those countries are extremely concerned, but particularly watch the Japanese reaction.
Kira Phillips for us, tracking her sources. Kira, thank you for your contributions. We will check back in again. Kira just mentioned Russia, China, and Japan. Well, another country that is involved not only in the six-party talks, but of course directly involved and perhaps with the most at stake in any confrontation with North Korea is South Korea. On the phone now, CNN correspondent Song Ji-ae, and she's in Seoul.
Yes, John. In South Korea, things are actually strangely quiet, and it's been typical of South Korea. South Korea has been very cautious. They are watching the situation. South Korea has not made any official confirmation as to whether North Korea fired the missiles or if what type of missiles North Korea fired. But they are watching the situation very carefully. They are expected to hold a National Security Council meeting sometime this morning, and it was not totally unexpected. South Korea's Foreign Minister Ban Ki-moon was on a trip to Asia and Africa, which he cut short and came back yesterday. So there were moves already that South Korea was watching this very closely. Although they have not made an official position yet, when they do make it, it is expected to be mildly condemning North Korea, and also South Korea is expected to be very, very cautious and very, very worried about the fact that the North Korea's firing of missiles could raise tensions here in this region, and this could adversely affect South Korea, John.
You say no official reaction from the government as yet, but I assume this is being widely covered in the media in South Korea. What is your sense of the mood on the street, if you will?
Well, South Koreans, it has been leading South Korean news programs, and it will be topping South Korean newspapers, although it happened a little too early to top South Korean morning papers. But South Korea has been expecting this for some time, and it has not been the first time that North Korea has done it before. And although the last time it did fire, it did raise tensions, the South Korea was able to work diplomatically out of the situation. South Koreans are hoping that this will be the same, although, as someone mentioned before, the key player in this situation as to whether South Korea and North Korea will be able to work diplomatic out of the situation will be Japan. So South Korea will be looking at Japan very closely. It will try to do whatever it can to ease tensions, to calm tensions in this region, and hope for the best, John.
And South Korea is one of the places where we try to monitor one of the most secretive regimes in the world. Any indications of what the North Korean government is saying through the North Korean news agency?
Not yet. We haven't seen anything from North Korea yet, although we do expect North Korea to say something soon. It is expected that North Korea, as it did before, claimed that it was something that North Korea had every right to do, that it was in its national interest. They might also claim that it was a satellite launch. But whatever it claims, it will say that it was in every right to do whatever it did. And so we will be monitoring very closely what the North Korean official news agencies will be saying, John.
And we will check back in when that happens. Song Ji-ae, our correspondent in Seoul, one of our best and another example of CNN's global reach. Song Ji-ae, thank you very much. We want to check in now with our Jack Cafferty, who's been watching all this from New York. Hi, Jack.
How you doing, John? The question we asked is, how should the international community respond to North Korea? Here's some of what you've written. As Terry in Fayetteville, North Carolina. China knows how to deal with North Korea, and all it takes is a boycott of Chinese goods to give them the will to do it. Some improvement in the U.S. trade deficit would be a pleasant side effect. Gary in Miami, diplomacy is the way to go. North Korea was contained with Clinton based on diplomacy. a tactic the U.S. seems to have failed in since this current administration has been dealing with North Korea. Psychologically speaking, you must negotiate, talk, and compromise in order to get anywhere. Things will continue to escalate if Bush continues to manage North Korea the way he has been, and then we'll really have to worry. Steve in San Jose, California, simple question. They made a provocative military motion. We should react with one of our own. Blow up the launch tower. Give them 24 hours advance notice so they can clear out innocent people and then blow it up. No launch tower, no launch. Salvador, New Orleans, the only thing that would work is to make it clear, just like the Israelis have with the Palestinian Prime Minister, that Kim Jong-il is himself a target now. This is a regime based on a personality cult, and we have to address that personality. Nothing else will work. The European community needs to get on board with the USA to convey this message to Pyongyang. Chris in Santa Rosa, California, the general Western analysis of Kim is that he's a mentally challenged despot who simply seeks respect and security. His goal is not war, we hope. In that light, I feel the immediate U.S. response to the current situation should be no external response whatsoever. Our lack of annoyance at his provocation bolsters our political position. And finally, C writes this: tell that little sick, twisted, spoiled brat to leave the nukes alone before his butt gets evaporated. So simple. John.
Diplomats all. Jack Cafferty in New York. Jack, thank you very much. And stay with us. We'll continue to cover this dramatic breaking story, missile firings by North Korea on this Independence Day here in the United States. Stay right here. When we come back, the CNN Security Council, Richard Falkenrath and John McLaughlin, two men who have been at the table in government when it faces such high-stakes diplomatic military confrontations. Stay right here.
Rates are climbing higher, and so are your interest payments. Refinance your adjustable rate mortgage with LendingTree and save up to $3,000 a year. Call 1-800-555-TREE now before rates climb even higher. When banks compete, you win.
As you can see, the terms are good. The rate is low.
Okay, then. Thanks anyway. Next.
Want banks to compete over you? At LendingTree.com, fill out one simple form to get up to 4 offers. When banks compete, you win at LendingTree.com.
When Walter got hurt on the job, he was out of work for almost a year.
We would have lost this house if it hadn't been for the disability insurance.
It's insurance that he didn't think that we needed.
Mutual of Omaha.
She always brings that up.
Begin today.
There's no drive like a BMW, and no coverage like BMW Ultimate Service, with more no-cost maintenance than any vehicle in its class. BMW, the ultimate driving machine.
You're the generation that's redefining retirement from this to this. We hear you. We're the personal advisors of Ameriprise Financial, and we're redefining the personal financial planning to help get you there, starting with the Dream Book, a new way to plan for retirement beyond the numbers. To get your free Dream Book, call 1-800-AMERIPRISE. Then an Ameriprise Financial advisor can help you focus on what you want to do and how to do it on your terms.
When traditional investigation fails,
I think we've got something.
3 paranormal experts bring crime solving.
Oh my God, did you hear that?
To another dimension. Haunting Evidence. Wednesdays at 10:30. Only on Court TV.
I'm John King in Washington. Welcome back to the Situation Room. Dramatic breaking news on this Independence Day. North Korea firing at least 3 missiles, provoking a diplomatic confrontation at a minimum with the United States and its neighbors in Asia. We are joined here in the Situation Room by 2 of our CNN security analysts, Richard Falkenrath, formerly of the National Security Council in the Bush White House, former Deputy Director of the CIA, John McLaughlin. Richard, let me start with you. I was struck talking to our correspondent Song Ji-ae. The country closest to North Korea is South Korea, and yet no official reaction as yet. One would assume Seoul has the most at stake.
That's right. This is classic South Korean behavior. They really want no confrontation, no destabilization on their peninsula. Because if there is military action, if there's a collapse of the North Korean regime, who bears the cost of that? Who bears the consequence? It's them. And they, I think, really have decided they don't want anything to change. They just want a status quo. They don't want to be responsible for the North. This is the worst possible news for them, and they're terrified of what the United States or Japan or the others might do.
John McLaughlin, I assume from an intelligence perspective, This is, while it's a dramatic event, you might say a provocative event, it's in some ways is not a bonanza in terms of gathering information?
Oh, absolutely. With all the warning that we had of this potential firing, you can bet every intelligence system in the United States inventory was trained on this. Back in 1998, when they fired the Taepodong-1 missile, we learned a tremendous amount about North Korean missiles. And while this one is a failure, one of the things I would point out is that they succeeded in some respects with a comparable missile in 1998. One of the hardest things you can do when you're launching multi-stage missiles is get the two stages to separate at altitude, and then get the second stage to actually ignite and keep going downrange. They succeeded in doing that in 1998, so we shouldn't forget that they have some sophisticated technology here. What North Koreans tend to do when they build missiles is bolt old systems together, and then they fire them. They don't test them the way we do. We would test every stage, we would polish, we would go through all kinds of rehearsals. They bolt them together and let them rip. And in all likelihood, in fact, I'm quite certain, in the case of this, particularly this Taepodong-2 missile, at least one of these stages had never been tested before. So it doesn't surprise me at all that, that it did not get very far.
Gentlemen, I want to ask you to stand by. I want to bring into our conversation a man who we thought to be the closest known civilian to the North Korean government. Han Park is a professor at the University of Georgia. He joins us now on the telephone from Seoul. Han Park, what do you make of this? And we were just discussing here, the government of South Korea has said nothing yet. What does that mean to you?
I think the United States is responding a little too prematurely, rather harshly, because the missiles, the three were short range, one aborted long range. But the missiles were not a threat to the United States. And I think one dimension that is not pointed out here is that given the international economic sanctions, the only source of foreign revenue earning would be the sales of the military weapons. Short-range missiles is a very lucrative. There is a market there. So probably they're demonstrating the merchandise, so to speak. So that dimension is going to be a very important one, because North Korea is very squeezed economically by the international community.
So your analysis that North Korea is demonstrating what it has in the store, that's your analysis?
Well, I think that there is entirely possible. The North Korean military is independent of everything. They want to demonstrate that they are not going to listen to anyone. And in North Korea, there is something called the independent accounting system. The military will be allowed to engage itself in economic activities. And I think the sales of the short-range missiles is a very, very rational decision on the part of the military. So this is not really, it is partly political gesture, partly economic maneuver. I don't think it is a military significance at all.
And Han Park, tell me, what is the accountability to those in the North Korean military if, in fact, it turns out that what U.S. intelligence sources are telling us, this new long-range missile failed, 42 seconds or so after takeoff? What will the accountability be in North Korea for that?
I think the fact that they failed with this long-range missile does not undercut anything in terms of North Korean military accountability within the country. We haven't heard anything, but they're going to, I'm pretty sure, come out and say that all the tests have been successful. But North Korea has never meant and is not a threat to the United States. I don't know where the idea came from, namely North Korea is a threat directly to the United States. The North Korea's foreign policy objective is to improve relations with the United States. So if anything, they wanted to get the attention, and this testing really has achieved that. So I don't think North Korea will come out with the tail between the legs and we failed at the long-range missile.
Professor Han Park, thanks for joining us on the telephone from Seoul. We need to work in a quick break, but I have just a guess, shall I say, from standing at the table, that our guests, Richard Falkerath and John McLaughlin, have quite a different assessment. We'll be back in the Situation Room with more coverage of this breaking news story, at least 3 missile firings by North Korea. Stay with us. You're in the Situation Room.
Tonight on 360, the household handyman unknown to you. He's also a monster. It happened to writer Sebastian Junger. A Death in Belmont, a 360 special, 10 p.m. Eastern.
Roger.
As a kid, I used technology to help people do better. Today, Scottrade does the same for online investors. If you've been thinking about moving your account, this is the perfect time to come to Scottrade. With powerful trading tools and fast, accurate $7 trades, Scottrade gives you more for your money.
Hi, I'm the person who didn't save hundreds of dollars by switching car insurance. Yep, I'm the guy. Must be, because every day they tell me about a bazillion people who switched on TV, radio, billboards. They show me entire stadiums worth of people who switched. But Progressive Direct shows you side-by-side comparisons of competitors' rates and services, so you can see if their services are worth the savings. Those gazillion people should call Progressive, because no one likes to be wrong. Think easier. Think Progressive.
For viewers from around the globe, DirecTV is bringing home a world of entertainment. Presenting World Direct Services. Over 40 channels of your favorite international stars and shows. The biggest TV hits from around the world, broadcast in 12 languages. World Direct Services from DirecTV. To find out more, call 1-800-378-3309 or visit worlddirect.tv.
Can I talk to you for a second?
Well, what?
Well, things like the trash and dishes in the sink. Kind of made a mess here. Didn't really clean up after yourself.
Hey, this is Otto. Your complaint is important to me, so at the sound of the tone, please speak clearly and slowly, and I will get back to you.
President George W. Bush and Laura Bush, an exclusive interview. Larry King, CNN, Thursday, 9 Eastern.
More coverage now of our breaking news story. North Korea firing at least 3 missiles, a provocative confrontation with the Bush White House, raising a stir across Asia as well. I want to continue our conversation with two of the best in the business, our CNN security analysts, Richard Falkenrath, John McLaughlin. John, you were talking earlier about the missile capabilities and how it's different, how they test them live, if you will. You heard our last guest talking about he thinks perhaps this is some demonstration of the products, if you will, that North Korea wants to sell more short-range missiles.
I don't think so, no. They sell plenty of short-range missiles. They don't need a trade fair. Their missile, the No-Dong, is probably the most commonly exported and sold medium-range missile in the world. They make a lot of money doing this by their standards. No, I think they hoped that this missile would actually get up there, separate stages, ignite at altitude, go downrange. I don't think they were trying to hit the United States here, but I do think they were trying to demonstrate that they could fire a missile over Japan and out into the Pacific and tell the world that they have a long-range capability. I think that's what they were trying to do.
And Richard, you know the players in the Bush White House, they have a decision to make now about what diplomatic posture to take. It seems to be low-key for the moment. The president sending Chris Hill to Asia, working the phones to call his defense secretary, his secretary of state, meet with his national security advisor, but then go to the fireworks, trying to almost send a public message, nice try.
That's right, and they're going to work very hard to talk to our partners in the region. I mean, the two premises of the Bush administration's policy toward North Korea is first, the six-party talks are the way to go. Use China, Russia, Japan, South Korea as your allies in dealing with this very problematic state. And the second premise is you cannot trust these guys. And this act today will reaffirm that premise which the Bush administration came into office with. They are violating today their unilateral moratorium on missile tests. And it will basically say to the Bush administration, see, we were right. You cannot trust these guys under any means. And that has been the big issue in our talks with them on their nuclear program, trying to get verification that we could have confidence in when they give assurance that they'll stop.
Okay, more questions in just a minute. I want to quickly, they'll go over to the White House. Our Ed Henry, we heard Kira Phillips saying earlier that from her sources there was in fact a 4th missile fired. I understand, Ed, you may have some new information on that.
That's right. We're confirming not only what Kira was reporting, that there was a 4th missile test. We're now confirming with a senior U.S. official, in all there were 6 missile tests. The 4th one that Kira was reporting on was a Scud, according to this U.S. official. the shorter medium-range missile. That fourth one, by the way, happened about 6:12 Eastern Time. At about 6:31 Eastern Time, we're told there was a fifth one. It was a TD-2, that longer-term missile we've been hearing about. So that is now fifth overall, but second long-term missile tested. Finally, there was a sixth missile. This one was a Scud as well. Unclear exactly what time, but obviously some point after 6:31 Eastern Time. So to sum up now, a senior U.S. official here saying that there were in all at least 6 missile tests from North Korea, much more than we've heard already, and 2 of them were the long-range TD-2 missiles. And finally, just to sum up, I want to stress that as we heard earlier from a senior U.S. official, the White House here does not believe that there is any immediate threat to the United States. People are hearing these reports. It's obviously a very serious, urgent matter, but the White House feels there is no immediate threat to the United States. But they are saying, obviously, there's a provocation from North Korea that they are taking very seriously, John.
Ed Henry at the White House, thank you very much. Gentlemen, we have about 30 seconds before we need to take a break. 2 long-range missiles. We were anticipating the test of 1. What does that tell you?
Well, it confirms a suspicion I had that they wouldn't fire off one of these if that was the only one they had. In other words, they want to have a refire in the inventory to explore, and they may have more for that matter, but
They burned a lot of jet fuel, a lot of rocket fuel today. I think they're trying to test their warhead. I mean, it sounds to me that for them, the name of the game is to mate a nuclear weapon to a missile. They haven't been able to do that. My hunch is they're working on a design that will allow them to actually launch a warhead.
We'll continue this discussion in the next hour. Richard Falkenrath, John McLaughlin, thank you very much. Ed Henry, thank you for that confirmation of that breaking news. Stay with us. Breaking news, North Korea provoking a diplomatic confrontation. Military calculations as well by launching 6 missiles now, we are told by the White House on this Independence Day. Stay with us. You're in the Situation Room.
Still have an adjustable mortgage? Refinance now to a low fixed rate from Ditech.com. We'll also guarantee you the lowest rate and fee. At Ditech, refinancing is quick and easy, even if your credit is less than perfect. Log on or call 1-800-71-FIXED.
When Walter got hurt on the job, he was out of work for almost a year.
We would have lost this house if it hadn't been for the disability insurance.
It's insurance that he didn't think that we needed.
Mutual of Omaha.
She always brings that up.
Begin today.
Guys, are you sick of feeling fat and tired? Has your sex life slowed down or even come to a screeching halt?
Introducing Nutrisystem for men.
Look at these guys. They all lost a ton of weight with Nutrisystem. You can too.
Order today and get 4 full weeks of awesome food. Plus, you'll get an extra week of hearty meals free. The secret to the system is the glycemic index, a science that separates good carbs from bad. So now you can eat pasta, burgers, even pizza.
Come on, get back in the game.
Since Nutrisystem, my sex life is excellent. I feel I'm back again. I feel like I'm better than I did in high school.
About $10 a day gets you 4 full weeks of rib-sticking meals.
If you want to lose weight, pick up the phone and change your life.
I'm 40 years old. I'm in the best shape of my life.
Order our 4-week men's program and get an extra 7 breakfasts, lunches, dinners, and desserts, a full week of food, and a $70 value absolutely free. So call now.
To our viewers in the United States and across the globe, you're in the Situation Room, where new pictures and information are arriving all the time. Standing by, CNN reporters across the United States and around the world to bring you tonight's top stories. Happening now. Breaking news, North Korea launches a global security crisis by testing missiles and testing the world. It's 8 a.m. Wednesday in Pyongyang, where the communist government is making good on its threat. A missile that could have reached the United States failed, but a dangerous and defiant message is getting through. What should the White House do now? It's 7 p.m. here in Washington, where the Bush administration is consulting with key allies, including Japan. We'll have live reports from around the world on the response to North Korea's bold provocation. And what could North Korean dictator Kim Jong-il be thinking? Is he proving he's downright crazy, or as politically shrewd as they come? Tonight, the man behind the missiles. Wolf Blitzer is off. I'm John King. You're in the Situation Room. We begin with the latest developments in our breaking news story. We're just learning the White House says at least 6 missiles were tested in the past few hours by the regime of North Korean leader Kim Jong-il, including at least 1 long-range missile believed capable of reaching the United States. Standing by with the latest, CNN national security correspondent David Ensler, CNN's Brian Todd and Zane Verge, and our White House correspondent Ed Henry. Ed begins this hour's coverage. Ed, dramatic developments. What's the latest?
That's right, indeed, John. This now coming on the record from Stephen Hadley, the White House National Security Advisor, that the White House is saying on the record there were 6 tests by North Korea. To go through the timeline, the first one was at just about 2:33 Eastern Time. The second one, 3:04 Eastern Time. Those were the short to medium range missiles. Then the third one was just around after 4 p.m. Eastern Time. That one was the TD-2, the long-term missile that everyone had been waiting for, the so-called big one. We're now being told by Mr. Hadley that there was a fourth one at 6:12 Eastern Time. That one was a Scud, the shorter or medium-term missile. There was some confusion about the fifth one. Initial report we had was that it was another TD-2. There was some confusion about whether, in fact, it was or whether it was just a short or medium-term missile as well. The sixth one, though, for sure was a Scud. It was not a long-range missile. The White House being very careful to walk a fine line here, saying and trying to reassure Americans that they do not believe there is an immediate threat to the United States. Americans all around the country on this Independence Day getting these scattered reports about urgent problem with North Korea. The White House trying to reassure Americans they do not believe there's an immediate threat, but they do think this is a provocation from North Korea, and they're really trying to push back and make this more of an international situation. Not make it the United States against North Korea, but say that Kim Jong-il, the dictator in North Korea, has now further isolated himself, and it's up to him, the ball's in his court, to stop the missile test and also come back to the 6-party talks. And finally, the White House now, a sign of the urgency, tomorrow sending a top State Department official, Chris Hill, to the region to deal with the diplomatic situation on the ground, John.
Ed, you say an urgent response, sending a top State Department official, but obviously the White House trying to keep it at a medium level, if you will, not to escalate it to the level I assume they think the North Korean leader is trying to get them to bring it to.
Exactly. They don't want to fall into the trap where Kim Jong-il wants to draw President Bush in directly. The president wants to take it seriously, obviously, but he is not going to get directly pulled in a tit-for-tat with the North Korean dictator. In fact, we're told the president is moving ahead tonight with watching the fireworks here in the National Mall that will be starting in the next couple of hours, and he's moving ahead with a small birthday bash that some of his friends and family have planned for him. His birthday, obviously, 60th birthday on Thursday. So they're, again, walking that fine line. They're moving ahead almost as if business as usual, but making clear they realize the urgency of the situation, but they do not want to be drawn in directly with Kim Jong-il and the president himself moving ahead with some of his schedule, John.
And Ed, it's often hard to get information, often conflicting information in the early minutes of a dramatic story like this. Explain, if you will, the confusion, I would assume, with the satellite technology the United States have and other capabilities.
Abbott, Kira Phillips, and others, that there were 4 tests, and the White House was saying, no, we only know about 3. Now they're amending to say at least 4. In fact, it's 6, and that's on the record now from Stephen Hadley. So that's the best information we have right now, that there were 6 tests, that according to the National Security Advisor, Stephen Hadley, John.
Ed Henry for us at the White House. Ed, thank you very much. And at the Pentagon, officials were ready for a shoot-down order if they got one. But North Korea's long-range test missile went down on its own. Our Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr has more on the U.S. military's tracking of the test and the threat. Barbara?
Well, John, even at this hour, U.S. military officials, command centers at NORAD in Colorado, at the U.S. Strategic Command in Omaha are continuing to watch North Korea, watch all of this unfold around the clock. Let's be clear here. What we do know is at least one of these missiles was that long-range Taepodong-2, the one that the U.S. was most directly concerned about. That missile failed less than 60 seconds after launch. It dropped into the Sea of Japan, and the U.S. military had no response to it because they simply didn't need to. It was a very quick failure at launch. Then there were at least 2 Scud-C missiles, we are told. They also dropped into the Sea of Japan, one closer to Japan, one closer to Russia. The U.S. military is continuing now to monitor all of these missile launches as they unfold. They are seeing them as they unfold because U.S. spy satellites can keep track and detect the exhaust plume from missile launches as they happen. But there's going to probably be a good deal of confusion about what kind of missiles, these shorter range Scud-type, Scud variant missiles that North Korea is launched missiles 3, 4, 5, and 6, if you will, because North Korea often establishes its very own variants of Scud missiles. They call them No-Dongs. They call them Scud-Cs. They call them a variety of things. And very often with North Korea, John, it's simply some sort of customized missile configuration that they have basically kludged together. So there will be a good deal of work going on now, looking at the telemetry, looking at the intelligence, maybe not necessarily putting a name to each of these shorter range missiles, but trying to figure out what capability each of those launches, each of those missiles had. John?
Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr. Barbara, thank you very much for that. So what was the motivation for North Korea to conduct these test launches? CNN's Brian Todd is here with part of that story. Brian?
John, North Korea's leader has been called everything from crazy to calculating. With this latest seemingly dangerous move, analysts are trying to figure out which Kim Jong-il are we seeing now. Before the missile test, Kim Jong-il appeared to have some leverage. Analysts said he might have been using the tension generated by the buildup to extract economic concessions from China, Russia, possibly even the U.S. With that now in jeopardy, experts believe Kim had several possible motivations to launch the test. One, simply to see what he had in his arsenal.
The benefits of launching sooner rather than later are you get test data on this long-range missile.
Even with the apparent technical failure of the missile, experts believe Kim may have wanted to send a signal to the world and his own people that his military capability is growing and that his hold on power is solid.
Kim Jong-il does not have the authority his father did, Kim Il-sung. And an action like this may be one way that he is trying to establish that authority and impress those around him that he's just as tough as his father was.
Another point, to steal some of the world's attention back.
He fancies himself the world leader of the anti-imperialist struggle, but I'd say over the last 6 or 8 months, Mr. Ahmadinejad in Iran has been getting a lot of headlines. Mr. Chavez down in Venezuela gets a lot of headlines. But nobody's been paying too much attention until recently to Kim Jong-il, and he's like everybody else. He likes to get on TV.
Kim is also not likely intimidated by the possibility now of further sanctions, according to experts. His country's already isolated, his people already starving, and one analyst says in the end he doesn't think his best ally, China, will let North Korea fall completely apart. John?
Brian Todd for us, an interesting look at a fascinating, some people use other words, man. Brian Todd, thank you very much. And Jack Cafferty joins us now from New York. He's been watching this all afternoon. Hey, Jack.
How you doing, John? Remember when President Bush said this?
States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil, arming to threaten the peace of the world.
That was January 2002, the president referring, of course, to Iraq, Iran, and North Korea. Fast forward 4 years. The U.S. has now been involved in the war in Iraq for well over 3 years with no end in sight. Iran continues its efforts to enrich uranium, insisting it's just for peaceful purposes, while many around the world fear they are actually embarking on a nuclear weapons program. And now we have North Korea going ahead today with test missile launches, including the failed launch of at least one long-range missile today. Looks like President Bush might have been onto something, doesn't it? Here's the question. Which country from President Bush's axis of evil, Iraq, Iran, or North Korea, poses the greatest threat to the United States? Email your thoughts to CaffertyFile@CNN.com or go to CNN.com/CaffertyFile. John?
That question is going to get you your own personal version of 4th of July fireworks.
There you go.
Thank you, Jack. And coming up, live reports from China, South Korea, and Japan reacting to the North Korea missile firings. Plus, a dictator, eccentric at best, dangerously unstable at worst. We'll explore the mystery of Kim Jong-il and what may be driving him to provoke the world. Plus, will the Bush administration let North Korea's defiance stand? Our CNN Security Council takes on the question, what should the White House do now? And a 4th of July launch that was welcomed by many Americans. Discovery now in orbit. The Space Shuttle program back in business. We'll have a live report of the mission and the problem that could have thwarted it.
Clayton Dow Megwalai. I hope I said that right. I'm Matt Tucker. Welcome to America.
Oh, your Chinese is good.
I worked on it all morning.
Let's see.
The satellite-linked Acura MDX with Zagat guide ratings.
This looks good.
Bon appetit.
For a limited time, take advantage of 2.9% financing on all 2006 Acura models.
Men of the square table. Is it time to retire the high five?
No way! Wait a minute. I invented the high five.
What's next? I can't do this?
Guys, the high five is played out. Jerome, what'd you do when you won the championship?
I gave everybody a high five.
And the next week, when you found that great parking space, what'd you do?
I gave everybody a high five. Let's issue a continuance on the high five until we find a replacement.
The great taste of Miller Lite, always a good call.
It may seem intimidating, but really, it's one of the easiest things you can ever do.
I've been practicing.
Good. You're gonna need it.
Help America's youth. Be a friend. Be a mentor. Just be there.
Go to BigBrothersBigSisters.com.
You're gonna need it.
Help America's youth. Be a friend. Be a mentor. Just be there.
Go to BigBrothersBigSisters.org.
More now on this breaking news we're following. North Korea's defiant acts that provoked the world. The launch of at least 5 missiles. One of them, the big one, the long-range Taepodong-2, that apparently failed. We have 3 reports from the region now. CNN's Jaime Flor-Cruz is in China. Our Son Jie is in Seoul, South Korea. But we turn first to CNN's Atika Schubert. She's in Tokyo, Japan. Atika.
Well, John, Japan is the country that's been most anxious about this. All missiles were headed towards Japan. Of course, at least 3 of them fell harmlessly into the Sea of Japan, the closest one about 500 kilometers or 300 miles off the west coast of Hokkaido Island. Japan says it is gravely concerned and that it is issuing a serious protest to North Korea. In the meantime, U.S. and Japanese officials are discussing whether or not to bring this to the UN Security Council. Also, Japanese reporters are in Pyongyang, North Korea at the moment for a separate story. They've been monitoring the media there, but so far, no announcement from the Pyongyang government, John.
And Atika, when Japan talks about possible more aggressive action, is it just sanctions at the UN Security Council or any unilateral steps that could be on the table?
Japan has said that if the missile tests were conducted, it would possibly put forth its own unilateral economic sanctions, but that it may also call for UN economic sanctions. So both could be possible. We'll have to wait and see what the 2 delegations come up with, U.S. and Japan, when they bring it to the UN.
Atika Schubert in Tokyo, thank you. We want to move on now to CNN Son Jie in Seoul, South Korea. Son Jie, I assume the South Korean government, you said earlier, no official response yet. It has perhaps the most at stake in this confrontation. Anything as yet?
No, South Korean, not yet, John. South Korean ministers, National Security Council ministers are huddled in a meeting to try to come forth with an official position on North Korea's missile launch. When they do come forth, it is expected to condemn North Korea, but it is also expected to urge calm in the region. South Korea is typically known for, in recent years, to be very cautious and slow in putting forth their position against North Korea. At this point, South Korean officials are very concerned about the adverse effects of North Korea's missile launch in terms of raising tensions in the region and what that effect would have on South Korea, John.
And in the lead up to this, while the whole world was condemning just simply putting the long-range missile out on the launch pad and saying North Korea should not test, what was the position of the South Korean government going into it? Was it as strong as the United States and Japan as in warning the North not to do this?
Yes, South Korean government has said many times that it is doing everything in their power to urge North Korea not to launch the missiles. It has said it is going through official as well as unofficial channels to try to do anything it can. But we talked to a number of analysts here that have been watching North Korea for many years. And although there have been many, many logical reasons for North Korea not to launch, these North Korean analysts at the last moment have said their gut feeling is that North Korea would go on anyway. John.
Sonji A for us in Seoul. Sonji A, thank you very much. We want to move on now to Beijing. China is a close trade partner to North Korea, and in the view of the United States anyway, the country with the most influence over the regime in Pyongyang. Joining us now on the phone, our Beijing bureau chief, Jaime Florcruz. Jaime, any reaction from the Chinese government as yet?
John, no immediate reaction yet from the Chinese. A foreign ministry spokesman simply saying that they're still waiting for more information to get a better understanding of this situation. However, the Chinese media, the Xinhua news agency, promptly reported the news, both quoting CNN sources saying that the missile tests have been conducted and quoting a U.S. official saying that is a provocation. Now, the missile test put China on the spot because China is North Korea's neighbor and major ally and provider of food and supplies. Chinese officials saying they are trying to revive the six-party talks, which is stalled right now. John?
And Jaime, as you know, the big question, if this goes to the United Nations Security Council, if there's any push for sanctions, China has a veto. Has there been any discussion, as we have awaited the possibility of missile launches, missile testing by North Korea, any discussion in the official Chinese press or from the government as to what its posture would be if there is a UN debate about sanctions?
No official discussions by the Chinese officials or by the media. However, the Chinese typically do not think that economic sanctions is the best way to deal with this. They still think that diplomacy and negotiation is the best way to solve the crisis. John?
Jaime Florcruz for us in Beijing, Atika Schubert in Tokyo, Sonji A in Seoul. We will check back with all three of you. Great reporting from the scene in Asia. Thank you all very much. And let's go now to New York, where our senior United Nations correspondent, Richard Roth, is standing by. Richard?
John, we spoke with a Chinese official here in New York who said his country is going to take a cautious approach to see just exactly what happened. A lot of people say they're just watching this network to see what they can learn, diplomats hanging out here in New York. U.S. Ambassador John Bolton, though, has been working the telephone, speaking to other members of the Security Council. The North Korea issue will definitely come up in discussions tomorrow. It is unclear where it goes. Will it be a simple statement, which all 15 countries would have to agree to, or a stronger resolution? A couple of days ago, John, U.S. Ambassador Bolton said, when asked about North Korea's desire for talks, he said, you don't normally engage in conversations with someone launching intercontinental ballistic missiles. John.
Richard Roth for us in New York. Rich, we'll check back with you as well. We want to go now quickly over to the White House, though. Our Ed Henry there. Ed, we were discussing earlier, often in the wake of these dramatic developments, there's sometimes confusing, often conflicting information. Bit of a clarification from the White House, I understand.
That's right. White House spokesman Tony Snow has now come out and said on the record the White House is walking back from 6 confirmed missile tests. We heard that just a short while ago. We reported at the top of the hour. The White House initially did say it was 6 tests. They're now saying it's 5 confirmed. That leaves open the possibility there could have been a 6th test, but they've only confirmed 5. We'll have to see in the hours ahead how many the total will end up being. But at this moment, Tony Snow saying on the record it's 5 tests. And to be clear, the 4th one we'd already heard all day about, or at least in the last few hours, about the first 3. The 4th one was a Scud. That's basically a short-range missile. The 5th one at 6:31 Eastern Time was what is referred to as a no-dong. It's a short to medium-range missile. Each one lasted just a few moments. So in summation, you have 2 Scuds, 1 no-dong missile. There was also one that was undetermined exactly what it is. That's why there's some confusion about another one, exactly what that one was. But 1 Taepodong, that's the key one, the big one that everyone has been referring to. White House saying there was only 1 of those. And in summation, Tony Snow saying that the bottom line is the White House considers this a provocation from North Korea, but they want to reassure Americans they do not believe there's an immediate threat to the United States. And he added, quote, the last thing you want to do is escalate this. You want to deal with it coolly and diplomatically. That's why tomorrow the White House is already sending State Department official Chris Hill to the region to deal with it diplomatically. John?
Ed Henry tracking this developing story for us at the White House. Ed, thank you very much. And still to come tonight in the Situation Room, North Korea says it will start a nuclear war if the United States tries to attack it first. So how now should the United States respond to today's missile firings? And why was a CIA unit in charge of finding Osama bin Laden disbanded? The CIA says with good reason, but critics call it a mistake.
eLoan's loan consultants don't make money based on the rate of your loan, so you get the rate you deserve. No wonder home buyers are so excited about eLoan. That's just one of the revolutionary ways we're changing the lending industry. eLoan, radically simple.
At Johnson & Johnson, we understand the importance of touch. A nurse's touch is skilled. A nurse's touch is caring. A nurse's touch can touch the world. Nurses, we need you more than ever. A message of caring from Johnson & Johnson.
Got an itch? Scratching tears up skin. New maximum strength Lanacaine penetrates skin twice as fast with maximum itch-stopping medicine, plus germ-killing antibacterial. New Lanacaine stops the itch, saves your skin.
For each of us, there's a moment of discovery. We see that all of life is elemental. And as we marvel at element bonding with element, we soon realize that when you add the human element to the equation, the chemistry changes. We find a way of seeing that gives us a way of touching. Issues, ambitions, lives. The human element. Nothing is more fundamental. Nothing more elemental.
Every day, Progressive does something that's, well...
You've seen this commercial. You've seen 1,000 car insurance commercials. You know you can save, but you haven't yet. It's on your to-do list. It's not the most exciting thing on your to-do list. Right now, call or click to compare Progressive Direct against their competitors. And next time you see a car insurance commercial, you'll feel good.
Driver's license number, make and model, number of drivers, VIN number, submit. No.
Hey, think easier. Think Progressive. We give you our direct rate for car insurance plus the rates of other top companies instantly. Go to Progressive.com.
The award-winning Autism is a World. CNN next Saturday and Sunday night, 8 Eastern.
Welcome back to the Situation Room. We continue to track today's dramatic breaking news. North Korea firing several missiles, at least 5 missiles, provoking a confrontation with the United States. But as we continue to wait for new developments in that story, Zane Verjee joins us now with other news making headlines right now. Hi, Zane.
Hi, John. Mideast hostilities are ratcheting up yet another notch. Both sides saying Israeli warplanes have attacked the Palestinian Interior Ministry in Gaza for the second time in a week. There are no immediate reports of casualties. The strikes follow a rocket attack on an empty Israeli school and airstrikes on a Hamas training base. The tensions were triggered by Palestinian militants abducting an Israeli corporal, Gilad Shalit, a 19-year-old boy, late last month. Shalit's condition remains unclear. Critics say the CIA's decision to close a unit dedicated to tracking al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden is a mistake. The unit, dubbed Alex Station, reportedly was shut down late last year. It predated the 9/11 attacks in 2001. The New York Times quotes intelligence officials as saying al-Qaeda may be the inspiration, but terrorist attacks are now being carried out independently of bin Laden. Atlantic City, New Jersey is gearing up for a dismal end to the 4th of July holiday weekend. The city's 12 casinos are scheduled to close tomorrow if the state government fails to resolve its budget crisis tonight. New Jersey Governor John Corzine called a special legislative session today. Assembly Speaker Joseph Roberts says the budget writers will work through the night to craft a new plan. John?
Zane Verjee, thank you very much, Zane. And just ahead, now that North Korea has provoked the world, how should the United States respond, especially considering North Korea has threatened nuclear war if the United States strikes it first? And U.S. officials call North Korean leader Kim Jong-il a lunatic. We'll have a unique look at the communist nation's very reclusive leader.
My name is Andrea Heisler, and this is my story. I facilitate communication between two people who can't normally communicate. I started having joint pain in my wrist. I would avoid certain signs like last night would hurt my wrist. I took some Aleve. I could actually move my wrist. The one cool thing about my job is everyone's always happy to see me. Aleve worked great.
Take the Hyundai Challenge during the Hyundai Challenge Summer Clearance. Test drive the sedan that beats Honda Accord, the new Hyundai Sonata, with more standard safety features and interior space than Accord. The Sonata also offers great fuel mileage. And, like every Hyundai, it comes with America's best warranty. There's never been a better time to save thousands during the Hyundai Challenge Summer Clearance. Get $2,500 cash back on Sonata, only at your Hyundai dealer. Offer ends July 4th.
My name is Leonard Ross. I was born in 1906.
The Dust Bowl, the Depression, and 2 World Wars. That's just a few of the things Rosie Ross has seen in his lifetime. Through it all, he's had 2 great loves, music and his own independence.
If it's Friday, I'm playing at the Pinecone Inn.
Long-term care insurance from Genworth Financial can help you live on your own terms in your own home, receiving covered benefits where and when you choose. Genworth Financial. Insurance for living, solutions for life.
Somewhere between 2 highways, there was a really good station. Somewhere between breakfast and lunch, there was a roadblock. Somewhere between the kids and the grandkids, there was a second childhood. And somewhere between where you are and where you're going, there's a Super 8. See you along the way. Get more rewards with Trip Rewards at Super 8.
Drive to Rewards at Super 8 and you can win a hot Chevy Uplander. For details, visit super8.com.
Global warming. Some say irreversible consequences are 30 years away. 30 years? That won't affect me.
You're in the Situation Room. Wolf Blitzer's off today. I'm John King. For all the attention he's getting, Kim Jong-il is one of the most mysterious leaders in the world. CNN's Zane Verjee is here with a look at what we know and don't know about North Korea's leader. Zane?
John, we don't know for certain where or when he was born, how many times he's been married, or even exactly how many children he has. But we do know that despite his reputation as being very odd, he's even been called crazy, he's actually anything but.
He's not crazy. He might be emotional, he might be somewhat eccentric, but crazy, absolutely not.
Indeed, Kim Jong-il's persona may be carefully cultivated. As supreme leader of an impoverished country, he has little to bargain with on the international stage, and his reputation may work to his advantage. But behind it, there is, by all accounts, a shrewd dictator.
Really, everybody who has met with Kim Jong-il, and there have been quite a few, South Koreans, Americans, Russians, North Koreans who've since defected, they all come out saying this man knows what he's doing.
Kim Jong-il inherited the role of absolute ruler from his father, Kim Il-sung, who died in 1994. The elder Kim dubbed himself Great Leader, and the younger followed suit. He's known as Dear Leader. He's believed to have been born in the Soviet Union in 1941 or 42. But his birthplace is often listed instead as a mountain famous in Korean mythology. He's thought to have been married 3 times, although it's not clear if all were official, and he's known to have 3 sons and at least 1 daughter. Rather short in stature, he's rumored to wear platform shoes. He nonetheless had a reputation as a hard-partying playboy as a young man, and reportedly still has an eye for the ladies.
He recruits at junior high school level attractive young girls with clear complexions and pretty faces to be enrolled in his Joy Brigades. And the Joy Brigades' function is to provide rest and relaxation for his hard work senior officials.
Kim is also a huge film buff with a collection of as many as 20,000 films. U.S. officials say he even once went so far to order the kidnapping of a South Korean actress and her director husband. John?
Fascinating look at a fascinating leader. Zane Verjee, thank you very much. So how should the United States respond now that North Korea has fired at least 5 missiles, provoking a diplomatic confrontation on this Independence Day? Joining me now in the Situation Room, Samuel Berger. He was National Security Advisor in the Clinton White House. Returning with us, John McLaughlin, former Deputy Director of the CIA. Sandy Berger, you've been through this dance with Kim Jong-il in the past. Obviously, he wants the President of the United States to respond. This President's position has been come back to the 6-party talks. if you had 5 minutes with George W. Bush tonight, what would you tell him to do?
Well, I think this is clearly a serious provocation on the part of North Korea, and it ought to be met with a stern response on part of the United States and others. I suspect Japan will cut off trade. I suspect that they will do something about the remittances that go from Japan to North Korea. I think we should reverse the sanctions that we eased at the time of the nuclear moratorium in 1999. So in the near term, I think our response ought to be stern and clear. Ultimately, however, the real threat here is their nuclear weapons program. And we're going to have to take a new look, I think, at how we've approached that issue. The six-party talks have not succeeded. And I think we're probably going to have to engage more directly with the North Koreans to either determine that there is a solution or to convince China and South Korea to join us in sterner sanctions.
And John McLaughlin, as Sandy lays out the diplomatic choices facing the administration and its allies, there's also an intelligence question. After firing 5 missiles, the CIA and other agencies trying to learn more about just what North Korea's capabilities are. I want you to listen, before I ask you a question, to something the Vice President told me just a little more than a week ago.
I think it's also fair to say that the North Korean missile capabilities are fairly rudimentary. I mean, they've been building Scuds and so forth over the years, but their test flights in the past haven't been notably successful. But we are watching it with interest and following it very closely.
Fairly rudimentary, he says, and some might argue if this Taepodong 2 failed today, that he's right, that it's fairly rudimentary. But be honest, what do we really know about North Korea and its missile program?
Well, we know quite a bit, and even though this launch was a failure, as I mentioned earlier, John, there is a good deal of success in their background, too. Back in 1998, when they launched the Taepodong 1, a shorter-range missile, but still beyond the range of the No-Dong or the Scud, they did manage to get it off the launch pad, separate the stages at altitude, and then ignite the second stage and send it downrange. That's one of the toughest things to master in missile technology, and they did that. I think the failure here was with this first stage. Had that worked, it might be that we would have seen those stages separate, ignite, and move downrange. I'm sure there's an intelligence bonanza in these tests because with all the warning we had, you can bet every system the United States has was trained on this. And we knew a lot about their missiles before, and we'll know a lot more now.
And Sandy was noting to him the big issue looking forward is their nuclear weapons and what do you deal with them. Before I ask him for his diplomatic advice, give me your intelligence assessment. How many does he have, and what is his capability, if any, of delivering them?
Well, how many he has depends on how you divide up the amount of plutonium that we think he has and the size of the warheads that he would make. The best guesses, best estimates, I think, are in the range of 6 to 8 warheads. And we do not know, at least I do not know for certain, that they can weaponize that material and put it into a warhead that can be delivered by a missile. But I would put the chances of their capability to do that at about 80%. I would say it would be very prudent to assume, with all the years that they've had to work on this, that they can weaponize a warhead and put it on a missile. I think they can.
If he has an 80% probability of being able to weaponize it and deliver it, even if he's crazy, you have to take him seriously. What do you do from this point out? As you know, the administration has a proposal on the table. The administration says it has some incentives in it, diplomatic conversations, economic relations down the road, but North Korea has to come back in first to the table. In a situation like this, do you have to shake it up? Do you have to start over? Do you have to have a new proposal?
I think it is time to re-examine our strategy in terms of the negotiations. The six-party talks have not been successful in their present form. We ultimately are going to have to engage directly with the North Koreans, either to determine that we can, in fact, stop their weapons and missile programs in a verifiable way, or to convince the Chinese and the South Koreans that sterner sanctions are possible and necessary.
But John, you know this president, this is more of a political assessment than an intelligence assessment, but he's a Texan. The leader of North Korea just lobbed 5 missiles into the air on America's birthday on a day we were sending the shuttle back into space. Do you think George W. Bush's reflex is going to be, let's have a new proposal, some incentives to North Korea?
Well, I think his approach up till now has been a diplomatic one toward North Korea, so I think he will stay with the diplomatic track. I wouldn't anticipate the president leaving that track or taking any kind of military action here. he might take a look at new proposals. But a point I'd like to make is that when you're dealing with North Korea, you're kind of caught in a bind here. Yes, you can impose sanctions, but this is a society that doesn't sell very